Hello, in this video I'm going to talk about using HTML tags, and I'm going to point out some ways the tags work that should help you avoid common errors that beginners make when they're first starting to write HTML. I'm using the document from Robbins chapter 4, and it's now got tags added within the content. In a previous video, we started with the plain text content, and we added the basic structure tags that every HTML file needs to have. In this case, what you're looking at now is the same file with the text itself already marked up for its structure. So the first thing that I want to call your attention to is the way tags, HTML tags, come in pairs. Not always, but usually. So most HTML tags, and I will isolate this H2 tag, they come in a pair where there's an opening tag, there's content in between, and there's a closing tag that matches the opening tag. So in this case, what you see is H2 is the opening tag for a second level heading. /H2 is the closing tag for that same heading. And what occurs in the middle is the content that is designated as a second level heading. The tags have nothing to do with the way the content looks. We're going to add that in about 2 weeks with CSS. The tags are meant to designate the structural meaning of the document. So in this case, you've got a second level heading after you had a first level heading, which would be the biggest and most important heading on the page. I want you to pay particular attention to the way the slash points. Okay, when you have a closing tag, it has to have a slash, and the slash has to be a forward slash, the one that points toward the upper right. There are no backslashes in HTML, so make sure you're typing the slash correctly, and also make sure that you've got the pair set up with the matching tags, the opening and the closing. A pair of tags and their content are called an element. So we would refer to this as an H2 element in our document. So opening tag, closing tag, element. Now some elements are what are called empty elements, and these are the ones that don't have a pair of tags. There's only one tag. There are several elements, empty elements, that you're going to be using all the time. So one of these is certainly the image tag, the image element. The image element has no closing tag at all. So you're going to get very used to this, and I'm going to talk about the contents of this element in just a moment. Another empty element is the BR element. The BR tag makes a break, and I will talk about that more in a future video. And I'm also going to talk about the way Robbins set up her H1 here. Because as you see, her H1 contains text and a BR element for a line break and an image element. So her H1 contains more than just the heading itself. Two of the things it contains are empty elements, an image element and a BR element. Another completely common empty element, which occurs in every single HTML document as the first line, is the doc type. No closing tag anywhere. And another very, very common empty element, because it also occurs in every HTML document, is the meta tag. In particular, in this case, it's the meta char set tag. No closing tag, it's an empty element. So you need to be sure which kind of element you're using so you don't make a mistake and add an unnecessary closing tag at the end of your element. That would be wrong, and your HTML would be invalid. Notice too that all HTML tags are lowercase. Other than the doc type, the first one in line 1, everything inside the pointy brackets, the tags, is lowercase, no uppercase. So now I want to save this document, and I want to show you how it looks in the browser. And to do that, I'm going to go back to my folder and go inside, and there's only 2 things in it: the image that Robin supplied in chapter 4 and the index.html that I've built. So if I double click this in my Finder, or in my Documents window, it will open in my default web browser, which is Chrome, as yours should be. So it's a very simple page. It doesn't have any styles or colors added to it, and we're not going to do that in this video. But I want you to notice in particular the image at the top and the H1 heading below it, Black Goose Bistro, because I'm about to change the way that's set up in the HTML. Because although the way that Robin's did it is perfectly okay, you don't need to have the image inside the H1. So I'm going to delete the H1 there, move it down to here, and I'm also going to delete the BR element. So I've rearranged Robin's HTML slightly. So I've got the image element all by itself with nothing surrounding it. It's inside the body, of course, because it needs to be in the browser window. And then below that, the H1 element. So I'm going to save again and reload. And you'll notice, other than a slight movement upward of the image, the layout of this page hasn't changed at all. And I wanted to point this out because I think that this is more semantically correct. I think that including the image inside the H1 element is really not preferred anymore, and I wish Robin's had fixed that. Notice that spaces, I've got a lot of line spaces here in my document. Spaces between the elements, spaces between the lines. They are not going to make any difference to what we see on the page, because the structure of the page is determined by the tags, not by spaces that you type. Even if I add a lot of spaces within my H1 element, around the words and in between the tags, if I save this and reload it in the browser, it makes absolutely no difference. All those spaces I added do not affect what we see, because again, what we see is affected by the tags and their contents. Extra spaces are ignored. Now, one last important point for this video. I'm going to talk about attributes, and I will first clean this up a bit. The image element is the best place to start thinking about attributes, because an image element has 2 required attributes. So what is an attribute? An attribute has a specific name. The first one here is SRC, it stands for source. The second one is alt, ALT, so these are 2 names of attributes, source and alt. And what is the value of the attribute? The value of source is blackgoose.ping. It must be in quotation marks. The value of alt is logo, also must be in quotation marks. So these attributes are part of the image element, and they're required. If you want to find out whether an element has attributes or not, whether they're required or optional, what you should do is you should go to Mozilla Developer Network, MDN. This is the absolute place to look up the correct and most current up-to-date information about HTML tags, HTML elements, HTML attributes. So if you look on the left-hand side, you'll see that every tag in HTML is listed in alphabetical order. And if we go down to image, IMG, and we click it, we learn everything there is to know about the image element. Everything about its attributes, what attributes are possible. There are many possible attributes in addition to the required ones. I want to point out that attributes are not arbitrary. So other tags other than IMG, the image element, they don't have these same attributes. You can't put one of these just inside any HTML tag. So now we're ready to get started with some specifics of HTML in the following videos.